This is Echo Pass Outpost, checking in from the edge of the map. If you can hear the signal, you can still escape the Matrix.
All right, looks like we're rolling. Let's see. Are we rolling? We're rolling. The red dot's on, so hopefully this is going. Well, welcome to Echo Pass Outpost. This is the first official video of me talking. It's not going to be fancy because I'm still working all the bugs out of the channel and getting things going. And I'm just sitting here in the shop. I'm like, I got to do a video because I keep planning to do videos and I got stuff I've been working on, but I'm like, I ain't never getting it done because I got all this other stuff going on. And I'm researching. And it's like, I don't know if you guys are this way, but like I get into researching and I find stuff and I want to share it, but there's nobody around really to share it with, right? Like people people think I'm crazy with a lot of this stuff, right? And so I really want to share some of the information when I study it, and I'm like, I'm going to do a video on this. I'm going to start a YouTube channel. I'm going to do a video. But then I just never get around to it because I'm like, oh, how do I do a video and make it sound good to people and, try to put it all together and make it nice. And it just doesn't happen. So I'm like, all right, I'm out here in the shop. I'm just going to turn the camera on. I'm going to wing it. I got a little piece of paper here with a quote on it from a guy for a tidbit. But I guess basically I just want to say, hey, if you're interested in Satan's little season, I think we're most likely in it. I think the Millennial Kingdom came and went. Satan got released. And the whole world all the nations of this earth are being deceived. I think that's the time we're living in. I think a lot of stuff like mud flood, orphan trains, all that stuff, a lot of this crazy stuff that people are into, these conspiracy things that are, I think they all tie together, and I think some people see that and some people don't. So I want to share some of that. I want to just share my thoughts for, if whoever's interested in hearing them. I love hearing the thoughts of all other channels out there. So I was like, I kind of cover some stuff in my research that I don't see a lot of people sharing. A lot like with Native Americans and the Lewis and Clark stuff. Like I don't see much in depth in that. So I'm in Montana, and there's a lot of crazy, crazy stuff around Montana that falls into all this. Like in and of itself, you see these little things and you think, now how does that fit with Satan's little season? Or how does that fit with the mud flood? But, one thing by itself, a dot on a wall, as General Stubblebine said, one dot does not a picture make. But when you start putting all the dots on a wall together, all of a sudden a picture can start to emerge. And so that's some of the stuff I'm going to try to share. Some of the dots that I see that are making a picture to me. And they seem to be coming together. And I think that, I don't want to get too far off track. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to try to, I get talking and I'll talk for an hour. And then people are like, make a short video, quit talking and yammering. I'm sure that's what people say. So I'm going to just leave that at that, okay? We'll get into that later. But I'm looking at this piece of paper here because I want to give you this quote. So this is my little breadcrumb for today. The Native Americans, I think we've been totally lied to about the Native Americans. A lot of it. Not everything. They never lie about everything, but they lie about enough, They give us a little bit of truth and then they lie about the rest. That's how good lies work. Check this out. I was reading an old book. I started reading it. I haven't read the whole book. I just started reading this. So I had never heard until in the last week that some of the earliest missionaries in this country to the Indians came away with the belief, like this guy, this guy lived with the Indians up until around 1775, I believe. So the early 1700s, before this country was even the United States of America, right? Or before the Independence Day thing, right? So according to the story, this is all according to the story, right? So he writes this book. He lived with the Indians for 40 years. And I'm guessing from what I've read so far, it was the Eastern Indians, like the Cherokee and the Choctaw and them. So it was out in that area. He lived with the Indians for 40 years. And he walked away from that with his opinion in this book. He cites a lot of stuff. He believes, or he did believe, right, at the time, that his conclusion was that the Native American Indians, or a good amount of them in this country, were from the 10 lost tribes of Israel. I'm like, what? What? I read that. I was like, what? I've never heard this. I'm into all kinds of conspiracy theories. I've never heard this. I've lived in Montana for over 25 years, and I'm like, I've never heard this about the early missionaries. Okay? That that there were early missionaries that said they thought the Native Americans were part of the 10 lost tribes of Israel. So, and he goes into all this stuff like how they have a lot of their feasts that they kept were very similar to the feasts that would have been kept, like during the Millennial Kingdom, or the old Hebrews kept. Like this guy didn't believe that we were past the Millennial Kingdom, right? But when the Millennial Kingdom comes, if you read in the Zechariah and stuff, Isaiah, they are going to be keeping the feasts, like Sukkot and stuff, right? And they're going to keep the Sabbath, from the way I read it, if you take the Bible literally. So this guy's like, a lot of their feasts and a lot of the stuff they do and the way their language was, certain tribes' language, he said was, and he gives examples, it was very close to the Old Hebrew. And I was like, wow, I'm reading this stuff. I'm just like, whoa, this is crazy. So here's a quote from him, from the book. It says, they have their stated feasts, their daily sacrifices, and a sort of excommunication, like if you didn't follow these things, right? And they never eat the hollow of the thigh of any animal, right? Because that's like a Hebrew thing, I guess, and old Hebrew, and they practice. This is what I was like, what? I had to read this like 3 times to make sure it was right. And they practice circumcision. They circumcise their kids, their male children, and I'm like, I've never heard that. So that's my breadcrumb that I'm dropping, because I think I'm going to start sharing some tidbits, maybe some longer videos, hopefully, but I'm not real good at putting long videos together. With all other people on YouTube are so good at putting together these big long videos and laying out all the documentation. I'm going to try to do that, but I'm not real good at that. So I'm going to at least drop these little tidbits and you guys can research them. This guy's name is James Adair. He's an early missionary in the early 1700s to the Indians. And he walked away believing, after 40 years of living among them, that they were from the 10 lost tribes of Israel. Now, I think that falls into the Satan's little season thing, right? Because I think if I shouldn't even go there. I'm not going to go there. That'll be a different video. One of my things is okay, if we came out of this, which I believe the millennial reign's in the past, and in the 1,000 years were literal, I'm not a preterist. I get so crazy, I try to tell people some of this stuff around here locally, and they're like, you're a preterist. I'm like, I'm not a preterist. And I tell them, look, preterists believe this. And I tell them what preterists believe. And they're like, exactly. And I'm like, no, I believe the 1,000 years were literal, 1,000 years. Is that what preterists believe? And they say no. And I'm saying, why do you call me a preterist then? It's because they can't open their mind up to think outside the box, I think. I have this one guy I talked to a little bit, and he just cannot, he just wants to keep telling me I'm a preterist. And I'm like, I don't think that we've got to the great white throne judgment yet. Full preterists believe everything's done. It's all happened, right? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't believe that. And I said, partial preterists, don't they believe that the millennial kingdom's off in the future and they're still waiting on the second coming of Christ? And he says, yeah. And I said, I don't believe that either. And he will not. I'm not going to keep going on. It makes me crazy. I'm not a preterist. If anybody out there's watching this, I'm not a preterist. I believe the stuff is literal. I believe the 1,000 years is literal. I believe we got to the end of it. I believe we're living in the deception time. And that's why probably nobody can look at, and most people can't look at this. Because there's this deception that Satan has pulled over everybody. And we just can't even have an honest discussion about this. But the thing is crazy is well, how, if that's true, how did we come out of that? Like, how did that happen that we came out of the 1,000 years when he got released and here we sit? Well, I think if you did, you would have some of that, those people that lived through the 1,000 years, they were practicing that, you know, Sabbath and stuff. According to the Bible, if you believe the Bible literally, they were doing certain things, living a certain way during the Millennial Kingdom, right? Well, then when that ended, those people eventually chose not to do that stuff. Like it says in, I don't know whether it was Isaiah or Zechariah or one of those. I'm not good at remembering the particular spots, but it says in there that during the Millennial Kingdom, that if the nations don't come up to Israel, then he will cause it not to rain on them. So, I mean, even during the millennial reign, you had people that were not following everything, right? And then he would cause it not to rain on those nations or those areas. And so I think that as we came out of the millennial kingdom, people, like in the Garden of Eden, they were in the Garden of Eden and they chose, no, we don't want to do things his way, right? And Satan tempted them. He deceived them and said, hey, this is what's the best thing to do. And Eve decided to do it, and Adam followed along. And there they sat outside the garden. And I kind of think that's how the millennial kingdom ended, is like people just decided once Satan was released, he did the same thing as he did in the Garden of Eden. He said, hey, this is what you guys should do. You want freedom, man. And so then they came out of that. But even coming out of that, you had all those people that lived during that time. And I think that that still would have gotten handed down through generations. You know what I mean? I don't think it would have just been like this and they just rejected everything. I think they still would have been just like how Israel would practice and they'd do stuff. They'd just say, you know, they'd take other gods and stuff and they'd kind of adapt it to their thing. Israel was doing that all the time in the Old Testament. I think that's what would have happened at the end of the millennial kingdom. And so I think there's going to be breadcrumbs. And I think the Indian thing, the Native Americans, having a lot of this stuff is fascinating, because I think that that shows that they're descendants of people who lived during the millennial kingdom. That's what I'm looking at it as. It sounds crazy. But anyway, all right. This video's been long enough. I'm out of here. Thanks for tuning into the first video, and hopefully there'll be more to come, right? I'm working the bugs out, so, you know, be patient. I'm out. I'll talk to you guys later.
Whispers rise through the veil of ash, calling back to echo